Manson Meekins of Avon talks about the hunters who visited Avon when he was a boy. Amy Glass interviewed Mr. Meekins in 1988 for the Southern Oral History program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
But the people who did the hunting, when I was a youngster, there was one man, we called him a Yankee, Sportsman. He had a cottage right over here, a house right over here within sight of me like today. And Mrs. Campbell lives on the site. He had a hunting club, one-man hunting club. He had several boats. He had men out of the village would take care of the decoys, paint them up, keep his boat repaired. He had about 2-3 boats, one a motorboat. He'd come down in the fall year during the duck season, bring his lady friend to the state area as long as he wanted to. He would go out almost every day was decent hunting. These people would go out, the guides from the village, take him out to the reef, tie him out, put him in his blind, his hunting box, and they would take sail skiffs and sail up and down the sound, rallying fowl, scaring them up so they would fly into the hunter, okay? We would always try to go down to the shore about dark, just before dark, and meet the hunters. That was, the village would just go down and meet the hunters. They would come in, anchor their decoy skiff maybe off and their motorboat, bring the fowl in, the dead fowl that he had killed, and put them on the shore. If he had 3 guys, 3 fellows hunting with him that day, they would pile the wildfowl in 3 piles on the shore, right on this seaweed we're talking about maybe. They divide them. Each one goose here, one goose there, one goose there. So many ducks, so many brant. And then after they divide them, that one guy would turn his back, one of the guides, and one of the other one would say, "Who has this pile?" And the guy looking in the westward would say, "You take it." "Well, who has this next pile?" The guy says, "Joe takes it." And that would leave him with the pile, you know. And then the villagers would come down, move over, and buy what they could afford of the geese and the ducks and the brant. As I remember, geese sold for about 60 cents a piece. For 2 brant, I think it was about 60 cents. Ducks were about 20, 25 cents a piece, depending on the species, whether it was a pintail or a widgeon or a redhead or a squawk. They were maybe 20, 25 cents a piece. Some of them they may even given some of them away. And then the owners of what was left would, I guess, would take them home, and then people would come by during the week and buy some of them. I don't remember what disposition was made. But that was one club here in Avon. Just a few yards up the shore, there was another outfit. Mr. Paxton used to come down, and he would shoot all week, I guess, and preach on Sunday at the Methodist Church. He was a good man, they said. He would go out and hunt. I don't know what he did with his fowl, but I imagine it's the same thing. But as kids, we get a big kick out of going around and looking at their decoys, their boats, and all the expensive clothing and nice guns and things in general. Another hunting source was up to the north end of the island, up to the northern. This man had a pound, also where he kept decoy tame geese. Mr. Bradford had his tame geese. I guess Mr. Paxton had his tame geese. Up to the north end, Mr. Richard Hupper had his tame geese. And they used them for decoys, some of them. They would go out to these hunting boxes on the reef and tie out, I guess, a couple hundred decoys, wooden decoys, solid goose wooden decoys, heavy things. And a lot of ducks and a lot of brant. They would tie these people out, the sports they call them. I noticed they use that term all up and down the coast clear to Nova Scotia. Anyone comes in to be taken out are called sports, okay. They would take who would come down and take them out and hunt them, and for a price. A gentleman by the name of Mr. Wall, W-A-L-L or W-A-H-L, I don't know. He hunted Mr. Richard a lot. And I guess other people come down. And we would go up there and stand on the Mill Landing Hill and wait for the hunters to come in up there. That hill was about the highest promontory that we had up there. We could see for a long way. The hill's still there, by the way. And watch the hunters come in. We'd go down and watch them divide their fowl. And I used to watch Mr. Richard in the fall of the year getting his decoys ready, painting them, repairing heads, and I've got 2 or 3 of old decoys that he had, Brant decoys. Richard Hooper. The decoys in those days were rather crude, really, down here. You see beautiful decoys that were made up in Long Island, and the Ward brothers up around Chrisville, Maryland, and they made real pretty decoys. But these people down here, they just didn't have the facilities, and they made their decoys, like the Brant ducks, out of any piece of flotsam that will wash up on the beach that they make a decoy out of. We didn't have cypress trees, and people would get fence posts they'd make out of cypress trunks that they would bring over from the mainland and make fence posts out of it. And people would make their decoys out of that cypress. They'd cut sections and make decoys out of it with a hatchet and anything they could use. They didn't have band saws or...
The decoys were made by people here.
Yeah, they were made mostly by people right here. Some of these rich people brought in decoys later. I can remember some of them, like the Mason decoy. I can remember seeing some of those around Mr. Mr. Bradford's decoy stand. And as hunters moved in, set up clubs, they brought in better decoys. But the decoys that were here were crude, but they were very effective. And in those days, there were so many ducks and stuff that you didn't have to provide too much deception. And an interesting thing, an interesting method of hunting in those days, to begin with, they had what we call a lay-down battery. It was a little box shaped like a coffin, just like a coffin, that would fit the contour of a man's body, his wide shoulders, and would taper down to the feet. And it was about the size of a coffin. But that was supported from sinking by a decking that was made around it that would keep it floating. And if it floated too high, they would put iron ducks around it, iron decoys, to float it down to the right height. And put all these hundreds of decoys around it. I've hunted out one of those. As a kid, I hunted out one. And they were so effective that ducks would come right in over your head, within 3 or 4 feet of your head, and set right down in the decoys. Or you could see them coming up from downwind and come right in and set right down in the, squat right down in the decoys, or fly by in mass.